Hello, good morning, and good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast. This is Jonathan Nicholson with ISP Supplies. We'd like to thank everybody for coming today and logging into our webinar. Today's webinar format is going to be a little bit different than what we're used to. It's going to be a little less formal. We don't have that many slides to show with you, but mostly we're going to be going over dates, application process, do's and don'ts, the best way to fill out the registration, best way to bid. We're going to go over quite a few different websites, and no worries, we're also going to be sending an email after this webinar to everybody that registered with a list of all the websites and contacts we go over. We will also be recording this broadcast, and we will be publishing it on our YouTube and our Facebook page as well. So make sure that you like and follow us there. And we'll also be taking questions throughout the webinar. And we encourage you to please submit your questions in the chat box, and I will be cutting in with questions as we go through the presentation. So please keep them coming. With us today, we have our senior engineer, David Peterson, on the line, and he's got a lot of information to go over, so take notes. And David, the floor is yours.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan. The slide that you see on the screen right now, the first link is the fcc.gov/auction/105. That is the go-to link for all information concerning the Auction 105, which is the CBRS auction that we're all interested in. The Auction 105 at fcc.gov is the recommended communication for all the aspects of getting into the auction, through the auction, and finalizing all of your bids and all of your all the auction winning that you've done, and to get that going. And we're just going to pull it up here so we can take a look at it together. This is the link that you saw on the first slide. This is the 105 auction. Now, the first place that I recommend you to go is here with this adopted link. What that really is an Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to pull it up here. Let me see if I can get it so people can read it. So the Excel spreadsheet covers the county names, and it gives you a population, county ID, a few things like that. It also has one of the most important key components, which is your upfront bid. You will have to submit the upfront bid in order to participate in the auction. And so what you want to do is go find your county and just determine if you can, if you have the ability to pay, and this is a per 10 megahertz block for the bid. And so in each county, there's a total of 7 10 megahertz blocks that will be sold. As an entity, you are allowed to bid and win up to 4 of those blocks, leaving 3 more blocks for another entity in your location. Since we started with 15 10 megahertz blocks, that leaves 3 out there, basically going to GAA. And so we'll have a total of 80 megahertz that is unprotected, and 70 megahertz that is fully protected through the PAL. Of course, keep in mind that you also have your standard protected zones. If you are near the coast, you probably already encountered some of that, trying to get your equipment registered with the SAS. So you'll want to go through here and then use this as your beginning bids, and to determine if you feel that you're eligible. So the form that you're going to be filling is Form 175. I'm showing it on the screen right now. There's not a whole lot to it. Most of it is basically your business information. I'm just trying to determine what kind of business, make sure you're not owned by a foreign entity, those sorts of things that the FCC requires. But one of the more important parts of this is the 9 and 10 sections where you can get some eligibility for credits. For most of our companies, I would expect that you're going to be what they call a very small business. A very small business is $20 million, under $20 million. And if you qualify for that, that gives you an additional 25% discount off your bid. So the recommendation is that you use that in your bid. So if let's say you had $50,000 that you were planning on spending for spectrum, you would bid an actual 25% over that, and then once you bid, or once you win and then you qualify, you would reduce your payment by that 25%. If you're over 20 million, that would make you a small business, and that gives you a 15% discount. In addition, if you're larger than that, if you're over the $50 million small business, then you could also become, if you're an authorized rural business, you can also get a 15% discount. And then there are also some tribal land credits that are available if you happen to be serving tribal lands in America. These credits are not cumulative. They basically are, you get to, like I said, most of our companies are probably going to be eligible for the 25%. So it leaves you very few hoops that you have to go through at that point. So getting back to the slides. All right, so here we go. Important dates. So the next important date is April 23rd, 4/23/2020, and that is when the filing window opens. You will fill out the Form 175 and submit it to the FCC, and then I would recommend making sure that it's been submitted, that they've looked at it, and then they will go through the forms, and the FCC staff will approve that. And the deadline, which is the next most important date, the deadline is 5/7/2020. That you want to make sure that you are fully approved to be in the auction prior to that deadline. If you do not currently have an FRN number, I would recommend you get that paperwork filed. It may even be a little too late to get an FRN. I would assume most of us have them, but if you don't, the bidding does go through the FCC FRN website, so make sure you've got that T crossed and I dotted before the filing deadline. After that, of course, comes the wonderful next part, which is money. And the money deadline, the prepayment, upfront payment, is June 19th. You have to send that in a wire transfer to the FCC, and then I would verify that the funds are there and that you are approved to be in the auction prior to that deadline. Those are some of the most important deadlines before the actual auction itself. Then after that, in July, they're going to have a bidding tutorial. But right now, there are a ton of links on the FCC website that have some great information. So we're going to pull that back up for you real quick here, and I'm going to go through some stuff that I found very, very helpful. The bidding procedures is the next thing I would look at. They're quite complex. There's a lot of small print, so I'm not going to bother bringing that up for you here. But the crux of it is they designed an algorithm allowing you to bid either to bring the price down or to bring the price up in order so that one person can't really control the auction. They've really set it up in such a way that, let's say, the telcos can't come in and offer $1 million per market and then basically lock everybody out of the bids. They still can lock you out eventually, but the idea is that you're going to either increase or decrease demand. So if you want to bring the price down, of course, then you want to increase demand. So as things get cheaper, of course, standard law of supply and demand, that somebody would be more interested in bidding as the price goes down. Then, of course, if you're trying to outbid somebody, you're going to decrease demand by just, of course, increasing the price. There's going to be a clock round, and so everything's timed on a clock. You're allowed to have up to 3 people helping you bid. And keep in mind one thing, and I know this is a small community, but one of the more important things are that you are not allowed to communicate your intentions, the amount, where, and how much spectrum that you're attempting to bid for to anyone else. This is to try to keep collaboration down, to try to drive certain people out of the market, such as wireless ISPs. So that's a good thing for everybody involved. So I recommend looking through that bidding procedures document. It's quite complex, but they've got some great little scenarios that show you basically how it's going to work and what happens in each clock round. There's a basic fact sheet that talks about the PALs, talks about the spectrum, covers the key dates, licensing rules, that sort of thing. So this is just a basic fact sheet, really good to look through. Talks about the credits that you have, whether it's small business, very small business, tribal, that sort of credit, and gives you basic rules and how-tos on every portion of the auction itself. The releases are, of course, just the releases that they've been filing for public notice, but the education tab I found quite helpful. The first link is actually a video tutorial that walks through every bit of the auction, every step along the way, everything you need to look for, and I recommend viewing it. It's just a nice step-by-step. They break it down into pieces so that you can look at the auction and look at the system and be informed on how and when to bid in the auction itself.
As a quick recap here, Dave, a few questions came in. I'm not sure how long ago they came in, but one of them is the form available now, or do you have to wait until the 23rd? I'm assuming it is available now. You just can't file it until the filing window opens up on the 23rd?
Yeah, the form has been around for a long time. So this form has been used in every auction since they invented the Form 175. So yes, this is a copy of it right here. I just found it doing a basic Google search. And then it'll be open up in your FRN location once the filing window has opened.
Okay, and I believe we also have a link to the form in one of the slides coming up for some key websites, and we'll be following up with those as well. Another question that came in is, how soon do you have to pay the minimum bid?
Okay, the minimum bid has to be paid. Let's go back to that real quick. By June 19th, 2020. I believe it's 6 p.m., June 19th, 2020. So yes, that money has to be in the bank account, wired into the bank account prior to that deadline.
Excellent. Thank you for answering those questions there.
No problem. Okay, so then they're going to have more tutorial in July. And on the 20th, they're going to have what's called a mock auction, where it essentially gives you an option to get in there, act like you're bidding, and get used to the bidding system, get used to the clock rounds and how they work. And in general, prepare you that way when the actual auction happens. You don't feel like you're learning it on the fly, because essentially, if you think about an auction, if you go through a number of rounds and you have not bid, and like I said, you can bid lower, other people can bid higher, but eventually the way they determine if someone's going to win is essentially the last person to bid, and be the only person to bid, then wins the auction at the bidded price that they set. So you really want to be available and aware of the clock rounds. That way you can participate and feel like you got a fair shake in trying to win some of the spectrum.
Quick question here, Dave. Is the amount provided for the upfront payment credited to the overall successful bidding amount?
Yes. So then after the auction bidding ends, then you'll have to file the full Form 601, requiring you to prove that you have a financial responsibility or an eligible business. This is called a long form. So once you've won some spectrum, then there's a whole lot of red tape you got to go through, which is pretty standard for a government entity, right? So yes, once you've won, then you'll have to file the form, apply your credits, and then you'll wire them the rest of the money for your spectrum. One thing to keep in mind is that once you own the spectrum, you own it for 10 years. You must substantially use the spectrum within 10 years, or you risk the chance of losing the spectrum. And more importantly, if you've bid on the spectrum and have not used it, you potentially could miss out on the possibility of getting the spectrum again. So the FCC is starting to crack down on the age-old telcos have enough money to sit on whatever spectrum they feel like. They're starting to take that spectrum back, and it's definitely built into the Auction 105 CBRS system. So please keep that in mind, that you must substantially use that spectrum.
Great, thank you. A few more questions rolled in.
Absolutely.
Do you expect any of this process to be delayed due to COVID? It's a good question.
You know, I wish I had a good answer for that. I don't, but anything can happen. Right now, it looks like the actions that we've all taken, social distancing, appears to have put the curve on the long slide down. So if you look at the world virus numbers, the daily new cases is on the downswing. So hopefully there won't be any changes, but keep an eye out on the FCC 105 website. Let me get that back up again, because right here under releases, anything that changes will be released here under public notices. So keep an eye on that, and I think as the process goes, we'll have an idea, because the next, with the next important step coming up here pretty quickly, if they're worried about being able to have the auction, I'm sure that they'll put a public notice to postpone the auction.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's good tips there on the releases there, where to find all the notices. A few more questions. Do we get the upfront back if we do not win blocks?
You get the upfront back. There are no penalties for not winning.
Awesome.
Yep. Now, of course, it's coming from the government, so it could take a minute. But yes, you're not buying access. The idea behind the upfront is to ensure that the auction, that the people that are participating in the auction are not just randomly running the price up, or maybe running interference for a telco. You're substantially putting some money down. You're showing what kind of business you are, who you are, the full ownership details of your business, and that you're serious about getting and using the spectrum. So really, it's sort of it's not a pay-to-play sort of scenario, but it is making sure that you're substantially involved in this auction.
Good deal. Another question here on the use it or lose it clause. How quickly must you use it, and how quick do you have to build out?
So there are no details on specifics as far as, other than you have to have used it substantially within the 10-year period. So no, it's not like if you don't you didn't deploy your county in 6 months or a year that they're going to come out and check on you. They're realistically looking for this on the long haul. So it is a 10-year commit that you're getting the spectrum. And so no, I could not find any details on, we're going to come check on you in a year, and nope, sorry, you only put 3 units in the air, and that's not enough. So I suspect that, as in all things with the government, if there is a problem, if they're asking if you're substantially deployed, that you can sit down and have a conversation about the steps of when you will and how you will be substantially deployed for the spectrum that you purchased.
Great, thank you. Another question here is how often these auctions are going to be happening?
Good question. Wish I knew. I know that they're continually looking at auctions. Keep an eye on the FCC website for the auction website. It shows current auctions. You'd have to keep up on the commissioners' reports. Yeah, they meet all the time, and everything on the FCC website is 100% public knowledge. So anything that happens in any FCC meeting is completely logged in the meeting minutes and the releases from the FCC. So that's the best thing. Also, keep in mind that we have a pretty robust community. So there are people that, there are like Fierce Wireless and places like that let you know when certain new auctions are coming and that sort of thing coming up. I do know that there's supposed to be something in the 700 megahertz coming up pretty soon, but I don't have any details on that at this point.
Great, thank you. Another one is someone's asking if you can please explain what bidding units represent.
So the bidding units are part of the auction algorithm. You basically, when you're bidding, you have to use your bidding units to try to either bring the price down or bring the price up. The amount of math in there, I don't have an easy way to tell you how to manage that. But if you look at the where's that link again? Hold on, let me pull that up. If you pull this PDF up here, let's get this guy up just so you know. Public notice. No, it was under the education. My apologies. Anyway, there's a definite bidding procedure that you can under the education that shows you exactly how the bidding occurs, and they even talk about certain scenarios. So let's say you bid this and then this happens. So I recommend you read that over. There's a whole lot of math in there, but the examples are pretty clear, and that should give you some ideas on how to bid. I really didn't want to get too deep into that. That's a pretty complex process. Unfortunately, I don't have an easy way to explain that portion for you. But what we can do is I will see if if I can knock together something a little better using the examples in the fact sheet, and we'll send that out to everybody that showed up for sure.
Yeah, maybe we can also do a blog or something. So it's
yeah, it's like I said, it's a really complex process with a lot of math involved, and the math is, like I said, designed to make sure that any one person in the auction doesn't have advantage over the other person simply because they have a lot more money. It's basically everyone's on the same playing field. So I apologize that I don't have that answer for you at the moment, but we'll get you what we can. And also, like I said, the email to the FCC. But the links that I asked the same kind of questions about the auction on behalf of everybody, and these are the links that they gave me. So you're probably going to get the same emails that I've got that we're going to send out. So read the education stuff over, watch the video, and it should help. And then what we can do is we still have a little bit of time, so we can all learn together and make sure that you guys get out there and have the possibility of bidding and winning, hopefully.
Yeah, this is definitely something you want to be really prepared and ready to bid for, and well educated on all the steps and all the caveats too. So we definitely recommend diving deep and going through all the links that we're going to send everyone, and really becoming the master of this. So all right, so that's all the questions that rolled in. If you'd like to continue, Dave.
So anyway, that's about most of what I've got at this point. The main things that we wanted to get out to everybody is the links on where the education is, but more importantly, it's a very aggressive timeline. It's 13 days or 14 days in between the filing opening and the filing deadline, and your Form 175 has to be reviewed and approved by the FCC. So I would imagine there are going to be potentially thousands of those being turned in. So making sure that I would file it as soon as the deadline opens, and then follow up in 3 or 4 days or 5 days just to see if you've been approved. I'm sure you'll get an email, but I wouldn't hesitate to follow up personally.
Yeah, could you bring up the slide, please, with all the links on there too, so that we have it on the screen for anyone that's watching later? Thanks.
Absolutely. Yep. So I hope I gave you guys some information, some things to think about, some steps to go. Please contact us or the FCC if you have any more questions. If you want to sit down and have a talk through some more things, let us know. Contact Jonathan or support@ispsupplies.com, and we're more than happy to help. Your success is our success, so we appreciate everyone's time, and I hope everybody found today informative.
Thank you very much, Dave, for that in-depth dive into all the steps and everything. And like David said, if anyone has any questions, reach out to us, support@ispsupplies.com. We're here to help. If you need any type of equipment recommendations or any design assistance, we have your back on that too. This webinar will be recorded and posted on our YouTube and Facebook. So like I said before, make sure you follow us, subscribe to us, and we'll also be sharing it on various social media outlets as well. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today, and have a great rest of your week. God bless, everyone.